Great. So now that it's started, I'm going to kick us off. Just one more reminder, please keep your phones muted using *6, and we will take your questions using that text box. Today our speaker is Clare Roth. Clare is with the National Partnership Program at the U.S. Census Bureau. She's an account manager for the National Partnerships, and she's been an extraordinarily valuable resource to me and to Flo Gutierrez and Kids Account as we try and educate people about the need to really do outreach around young children for the 2020 census. And today she's going to be talking to us about a particular tool that the Census Bureau has developed so that when you're working with complete count committees in your state, you can develop innovative and creative outreach ideas. Some of you will have been at the Kids Count meeting, Bend the Arc, and will have had some exposure to this already. But even if you weren't there, this should be a great opportunity to learn about it. So before we get started, one more reminder, please mute your phones using *6. And I'm also going to ask you all to take a quick poll just so we have a sense of how much you know about the census work and the complete count committees and what you're doing in general. So if you can just answer the question, which should be on your screen now. We'll take a look at the answer in a minute, and then I'll turn this over to Clare. Well, we probably have a few more people who are ready to answer because we've got 34 people on the web and we don't have 34 answers. So I'm going to give people just a minute more to, just click on one of those 3 answers. No, I guess nobody else feels like answering. So we'll just show you the results. Almost everybody who answered the question is working with some kind of complete count committee, and that's great because it means that you will have an opportunity to use this tool, and of the ones who are not, they plan to. So having said that, Clare, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you get going.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Does everyone hear me? Deb, can you hear me?
I can certainly hear you.
Okay, awesome, great. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for, sorry, let me fix the right slide here. Okay, so those are the results. Okay, those are great. So I want to thank everyone for having me here today. And as Deb said, my name is Clare, and I work in the National Partnership Program at the U.S. Census Bureau. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with you. Some of you I may have already met at the Kids Count Institute a couple weeks ago. And I'm looking forward to giving you a deep dive into the Census Solutions Workshops, what they are, the methodology behind them, how to host one, and then lastly, how to access the tools that we have available to put them on in your own communities. So this first slide that you have is a series of screenshots from our toolkit, and this toolkit, thankfully, is now online, and it's on our National Partnership website, and I'm also happy to forward it and send it so that everyone has it. But the idea is that this toolkit really has everything you need, including sample agendas, worksheets, even mock schedules and timelines. So everything you need is in one place, and we worked on that so that you're able to really tailor this information and bring it back to you and your community members. Before I go into it, I think it'd be helpful to provide a little bit more context on how we came up with this idea and why we think this idea is going to help spread awareness on the 2020 census and increase participation. So following the 2010 census, our team began to gather a bit of research and feedback from national partners that we've worked with, and we learned that partners wanted to craft their own partnership efforts. So before, we had a pretty prescriptive list of things that partners could do, so that being posting something on social media, disseminating flyers in the workplace. And many of the partners felt that they wanted more of a say into how they actively participated with the census, and they knew that they are trusted voices in their communities, and they knew that they needed to tailor a little bit of the content and information to be able to fit the needs and the diversity of the audiences that they're working with and that they're serving. So with this partner insight, we collectively came up with the idea of Census Solutions Workshop. These workshops are incredibly interactive. They're very partner-led, and we actually take a very, us being the Census Bureau, we take a very probably back behind the scenes role to ensure that the trusted voices and partners are able to really work on this together and tailor it to their specific audiences. And as I said, these are just a couple of pages that you will see in the toolkit. Next slide, we have a couple of sample agendas. And so I'm going to do a full deep dive a little later on into how to put one on, how they come about. But before, I just want to show and point out a couple of the resources that we have. This right here is a sample agenda, and I think one of the great things with these workshops is that, let's say you have 2 hours in a conference and you have short notice but you still want to do a workshop, there are sample agendas that can address and work with that 2-hour time slot. If you have a bit more time and you have an interest in doing a longer event, you also can do a 9 to 2 event. You can do a 9 to 1 event. So it is entirely up to you and, once again, your audience's needs, because it's very, very focused on the audience, or as what we say, the user, and what works for them. It even depends regionally. If you know that the audience, the individuals that you want to invite are going to be CEOs and really decision makers, it's unlikely that they can dedicate a full 7-8 hours. Same thing can be said for individuals that are working in the field and are really the boots on the ground. Some people are just not going to have the time to dedicate to a full 8-hour event. And so we provide a couple of sample agendas that can really work with you on still building a great program, but with a slightly shorter time frame. And then a couple of things that you might also know, we're really happy to help with this, even though we do take a behind-the-scenes role. Very often we work with national partners, and let's say they come to us and they say, the audience members that we're working with or the individuals that we are inviting, they want a full Census 101. We're expecting to have people in the room that are census experts, but we're also expecting to have people in the room that know nothing about the census, and it's never been their scope of interest, but they want to learn more. Can someone from the Bureau do a data presentation? Can someone do a Census 101? And we really work with these partners to be able to build an agenda and connect you with your partnership specialist, connect you with your data dissemination specialist. And we have these data dissemination specialists that are across the country that are able to do data presentations, really honing in on specific data in your community. One event that we have is in Hazard County, Kentucky, a very rural area in Kentucky. And we had a data dissemination specialist come and do a full data breakdown on Hazard County. And what's great is that it also, I think, brings it full circle to the audience members in the community, especially individuals that never thought about the census. They're able to see how the census and how an accurate census really relates to so much of their work. And it really encourages quite a breadth of diversity of thought, diversity of conversations, but also a difference of opinions and different people that wouldn't normally be at events together. This slide here, once again, as I mentioned, in the toolkit, there's a content section, and this has everything. So some of the workshops that we go to, we bring some of these documents, and it's part of what we do with these guided exercises. We have these worksheets. If you were at the Kids Count conference in Atlanta, you saw that at your table there were probably 5 or 6 worksheets, and it's all from here. So it's really at your fingertip, all of this information, and you really don't need our help to do them. It's very hands-on, and we find that actually many partners, they don't want census involved because they're worried about how is it going to feel for audience members. And we might have audience members that are a little weary of having census in the room. We feel that we could perhaps have more engagement and more interaction without the Bureau there, and that's totally fine. So now I want to circle back to this design thinking methodology, what it is, why we started with it. And so one of the things that design thinking is a very fancy word for something that we do on a daily basis. It's understanding your user, but also understanding challenges and barriers that this user might have and coming up with a set of solutions that could address those barriers. This methodology has been vital to the Census Solutions Workshop because it focuses on the user. And that user is meaning the community member or the community. And it tries to find solutions and challenges or issues that the user community is experiencing. And so this portion of the workshop we call the Ideation Session. So you could have at 9 a.m. you could have a Census 101. At 10 a.m. you could have a data dissemination presentation. So a data presentation fully focusing on data in your community. And then let's say from 11 to 2, including a working lunch, you want to do a design thinking workshop, also known as an ideation session. You can also call it a brainstorming session, but it's guided exercises that go through these key elements. So the first one is the idea of empathy, and it's knowing your audience or a representation of that audience. The second element is defining the issues. The third element is generating ideas on these issues. The fourth one is prototyping, building representation of a range of your ideas. The fifth element is testing them. And then lastly, it's implementation. So unlike other roundtables, meetings that you attend, what makes this ideation session or brainstorming session different is that every individual leaves with a sense of, this is my next step. This is my call to action. I think with something as dense and intense as the census, you often leave with just trying to figure out what can I do, what can I bring back home to my community, and what can I work on that will really address the issues that many of my community members are experiencing around the census. It could be a distrust of government, concerns about the citizenship question, really anything, a digital divide, concerns about doing it online. So it's understanding who your user is and then creating solutions that you actually believe are feasible. And we will continue to work with you, not just during the workshop, but beyond, to make sure that we can work together and implement some of those ideas. So at every single workshop, at the end of the workshop, you fill out what we call a contribution worksheet. And this contribution worksheet is a worksheet that lists out some of the ideas that you came out with, but it also asks you to take a minute and think about, how can I actually make this happen at my organization? Or who could I work with, other community partners, other organizations in the room, who can I work with to make this idea happen? So first, it gets you thinking about what you can do around the census, but it also helps us build this partner network and extending our partner network to be able to reach and tap into audiences that we perhaps have not previously tapped into. Some of the workshop objectives, I've hit on a couple of them, but the first one is building connection. And that goes into what I mentioned earlier. Every workshop is different, and it builds a growing partner network for each partner we collaborate with. We work very closely with national partners across the country, and every workshop we're able to connect partners with new partners, but also we at Census Bureau, we're growing our own partner network. We are constantly being introduced to new partners through the existing partnerships we have. And many of these partners are organizations that we have not reached or we didn't know about them. And it helps us grow and understand, once again, that you guys are trusted voices, and we really rely on these partners to help us meet new individuals and tap into those audiences. So secondly, develop actionable concepts. And that's what I mentioned about filling out these contribution sheets. And it's coming up with ideas around what can I do to contribute to a successful census. It's not just building a stronger awareness, but it's also figuring out what is actionable, what is feasible, and what can I do back at home. Thirdly, it's building momentum. Even though it's 2018, we are so close to the 2020 census. And I think it's important when you have these workshops, many people in the room, they think that 2020 is a long way from now, but when they hear about some of the risks and some of the challenges and issues that many community members are foreseeing, it really gets them excited, but also gets them ready to start moving and really work towards an accurate census. And then lastly, it's showcasing a model. I think one of the greatest components of these workshops is that when you do a workshop, other partners across the country are doing the same thing, and it's a sustainable model. It's something that is not changing. It's being tailored to different audiences, but it's a model that's being used and replicated across the country. This is a case study that I think would be very helpful to dive into, and it will give you information on how these workshops came about, what each partner did, what was expected of them, and how they put on this event. So it was right during the end-to-end test in Providence, Rhode Island in April. The National Urban League came to us, and they're an existing and an old partner, and they came to us and said, we would like to do a workshop. And then Amy Casey Foundation also came to us and said, we've been seeing some things about workshops. We heard about something that was done in Silicon Valley. We're really interested in getting this moving. So we connected the National Urban League with Amy Casey Foundation. So then it was the three of us. So it was the Census Bureau, with the National Urban League, with Amy Casey Foundation. And then we're having conversations around, okay, how can we collaborate? How can we host an event? And let's definitely make it in Providence because it's in the backdrop of the end-to-end test. It just would be an interesting case study to see if there are new questions arising with the end-to-end test and what can that do with some of the momentum in the room. And so with that, Amy Casey Foundation suggested, hey, why don't we get in touch with our local affiliate, so Rhode Island Kids Count. We talked to Rhode Island Kids Count, and we had another one of our colleagues who's very connected with American Library Association, and some of the library networks in Rhode Island were coming to us saying, hey, we're getting some of our community members are coming into the library and they're asking about the end-to-end test. They're very confused. They're unclear on what this is. Can you provide us with some talking points? So then we brought them into the mix. We also worked with the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services. We worked with Children's Leadership Council. So now we are a full body of partners. And as you can see, they're partners that represent many different interests, but with a common vested interest in having an accurate and successful census, and also being able to spread information and awareness around the census and what it means. And so all of these partners came together, and the National Urban League said, okay, we need a host. The Rhode Island Urban League will host it. So once we had a host, we then had to address the question of how long do you want this workshop to be? Do you want it to be 9 to 2? Do you want it to be just a half day? And the partners came together and they said, given the extent of what we want to cover, I think that it would work if we did a full day, basically. So then another partner jumped in and said, I can sponsor the breakfast and lunch. And as we're diving into some of the other components of the workshop, there's also the question of material. So for these workshops, you have things where you're writing things on sticky notes, you're putting them up on flip charts, you're using Sharpies, you're drawing pictures, you're doing storyboards. So then there's the question of supplies. So then Annie Casey Foundation came to us and said, okay, that's something that we can lift. So at this point, every single partner has taken on a role. But these partners, besides the role of providing resources, they're also dedicating about an hour a week to phone calls, to conversations around the event. They're building an agenda. They're tapping into their own networks and finding out who from Urban League, who from Annie Casey Foundation, who from Children's Leadership Council, who from Partnership for America's Children can speak to this issue. And so they're building a very robust agenda. And then they're also building an invitation list. That's something that Census does not do. We understand that these events are yours, and so in that way, we rely on you to invite the individuals in the room and to know who this would resonate with. And so you as partners, you're building out not just the agenda, but you're building out the guest list. You're building an invitation. You're writing together. You're exchanging emails and making sure the language is going to resonate with the different audiences that you plan to invite. So each partner contributes quite a bit to this information, and right now you can see a couple of the organizations for this particular event. There's Theus Education, Scholastic, the Joyce Foundation, and many, many more. But there were about 54 people that attended this event, and some Census Solution workshops you can have 30. Sometimes you can have 80 people. It really depends on the space capabilities, what it can have. And to keep in mind, when you're looking for a space or you're looking for a partner to host it, you will need wall space so that individuals can move around, go to the wall, put things up on the board, and just room that you're able to move around. And that's definitely a key component to these workshops, is that you are standing up, you are moving, and so you need a space that can allow for that. Challenge statements. One of the most important elements of the workshop and the workshop style is focused on these challenge statements. And so what we suggest, and we work with many of these partners to craft these challenge statements. So it could be, in this case, for Rhode Island, the National Urban League said we want to focus on why is it that African American males between the ages of 18 or 16 and 24 are undercounted? Why is that such an issue? And can we get audience members in the group to discuss this and come out with some tangible ideas to target African American males that are being undercounted? Then we have Annie Casey Foundation that says, okay, that's a great topic. Given our mission and focus, we definitely want to focus on or have a question that addresses the undercount of young children. We also have libraries, and libraries are saying, these are great questions that, of course, we want to bring in libraries, and we want to figure out how can libraries serve as community hubs. And given the growing digital divide, what can libraries do to really help address that digital divide and become a resource for communities that do not have access to the internet or any sort of internet connectivity? So we work with these partners to transform those issues into what we say as how might we statements. And it's turning the issue into a question. And by turning it into a question, you are showing that there are answers to this question. And so we pose these questions to the individuals and participants in the room to be able to discuss them. So when you have your guest list figured out and you have your challenge statements, you have the agenda, one of the things you do when you're setting up the room for the actual day is you will have you'll have tables of individuals. So let's say you have about 45 individuals that are going to attend the event. So you have about 5 tables of 8 and 9. So you might have 4 challenge statements or 5 that you come together with collectively, and you give each table one of those challenge statements so that there is a diversity of thinking in the room, and that every individual, sometimes it's nice to have, let's say, the librarians at a table focusing on African American males. It gives many of our community members an opportunity to work on an area that they would typically work on. It's not maybe in their scope of work, and it's really great for organizations like the National Urban League or organizations that are representing African American males to be able to hear these ideas and understand how and what are some of these solutions that other organizations are thinking about. And I think it's a really great way to be able to get more diversity in the room, to think about these issues. And with these workshops, it's a rare encounter where you have individuals from retail organizations, you have individuals from nonprofits, from NGOs, and everyone brings a different type of expertise and skill set and profession in the room. And that's what really makes it a unique and different event, because you're getting numerous ideas out of it. And as I said, the idea is once you address these challenge statements, you've worked with your group, you've put things on the wall, you've come up with some solutions, you then share it out with the larger group. Oftentimes you can act it out. Other times you can just do a storyboard with pictures. It all depends on your preference. But you leave with a greater sense of, this is how I plan on engaging my organization in the census. This is something that I can do. And I think it leaves with a feeling of being empowered and actually having a sense of of an action plan and being able to really act and perform on that. And one of the greatest things, just with any networking event, is that you are leaving with new partners and new organizations that you can work with that have vested interest in the census. So I could speak forever on these Census Solutions Workshops and how important and amazing they are, but I also want to leave time for questions. I know that I've put a lot of information out there, mostly speaking it, but really the toolkit has everything you need, and I have my contact information also and can serve as a resource for you and any questions you have on how to put these on and address any future questions you have now or later. So I'll hand it back to Deb.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire. I really appreciate your doing this and taking the time. So everyone, this is a great time for questions. No one has entered them yet. I want to make sure you see where they are. They should be at the bottom left of your screen. You should see a little Q&A box, and what you do in there is you go below the Q&A box. There's a little bar, and you click on the down arrow next to it. It will give you a whole set of choices of who to send your question to. You can either send it to everybody or to all co-presenters, and then Claire and I will see it, and we will be able to respond to it. So I'm going to give you all a moment to do that. And Claire, I wondered, you obviously talked in detail about Providence, and I was there, and I thought that was a fabulous session. But I know you've been having a number around the country. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of some of the other groups that that have done these, just so people get a sense of the range of environments they can use them in?
Sure. So you mean some of the other partners that we've worked with?
Yeah, just so people have
Sure.
a sense of how diverse an audience this works for and how many different ways they can think about it.
Yes, exactly. So we did a couple of pilots before the Providence workshop in Silicon Valley. So we worked very closely with Facebook and Google and Twitter around all things related to census. And I think what was great with working with those organizations is that they use and they rely on census data, but they were looking for opportunities and an opportunity to learn more about how they could actually contribute to disseminating information, especially around the confidentiality.
Claire, are you still there? We suddenly lost your sound here. Why did that happen? Hey, Claire, for some reason you got muted for just a moment. Do you want to say the last bit again? We seem to have lost Claire. Does anyone have a question for Claire? Hopefully she'll be able to get on in time. If not, I will take the questions and send them to her and get them to everyone later. But nobody is putting any questions in, so hopefully this all answered your questions. This recording will be saved, and it will go on countallkids.org, and it will go on the partnership website. It will also be on our YouTube channel, so you'll have no trouble finding it. Claire, I hope you can still hear us. I'm not quite sure what happened there. It looks like she's dialing in again. So I'm going to give her a moment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. I don't know what happened there. You got muted, but then when I unmuted you, you didn't come back on.
I'm sorry. I think the call might have something weird happen. I'm sorry about that. But some of the other organizations, so NALEO, LULAC, we've done a lot with some of the Big 7 organizations. So there was a workshop with NATO. We're also doing one with Results for America next week. We're working closely with United Way. So many of the United Way branches across the country are doing workshops. The Latino Coalition did a workshop, I think, in the past maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and we're hoping to have a workshop with Hispanicize at their convention next fall. So it's really a wide variety of organizations, and our goal for 2018 was to do one in every single region, and we're close to having that completed. But I think what's even more interesting and great on our part is that we are getting emails from other partners that are doing these completely on their own. Many of them we didn't even know about, and they're sending us some of these feedback forms and the contribution worksheets that these participants filled out. So it goes to show that many of these partners are doing them on their own and actually want to do them on their own without Census. We also have the Organization of Chinese Americans that are putting one on in December. So it's really a wide variety of organizations, from the academic segment to the retail segment and beyond. So it's not your classic NGOs, nonprofits that very much know about the census, but it's also a lot of partners that are trying to understand what census means for them and bringing more awareness about it to their community members.
That's great. We have a question here from Stephanie McNally, and then I have a follow-up for you after that.
Sure.
Stephanie's question is, if we want to organize a workshop in our county, how do you suggest we get started?
You get started by emailing me. I'm happy to help in any way, but what you would do to get started is, I think, one, you would start pulling together partners. I think that's really the key first step, is to find partners that would be interested in hosting this with you. I think once you get that group of partners together, it could be just one other partner, it could be a couple partners. Once you get those partners together, you can reach out to us and we can connect you with the partnership specialists in your region or the data dissemination specialist, and you can begin building out an agenda and hopefully including the partnership specialist or the DDS in your area on that agenda.
Great. Sally, feel free if you've got Stephanie, if you feel free to enter a follow-up if you've got one. And while she's thinking about that, I wanted to ask you, since pretty much everybody on this call is a child advocate, whether you've been to others where one of the questions was about reaching young children and what some of the most creative ideas that you heard were. Just to give people a sense of the range of the brainstorming.
Yes. So I've done a couple now with organizations that are representing children advocacy groups, or sometimes it could be a totally different group. We did a workshop with State Voices, and we've done a workshop with government leaders, and they are very interested in the undercount of young children, so they will also include that in one of their challenge statements. I think some of the most interesting ideas, and probably the most common ideas, have come out regarding your pediatrician's office and having, or at your when your kid is going in to the dentist for the first time, having sugar-free candy or having a sugar-free lollipop that has a census reminder. That our Undersecretary of Commerce, Karen Van Kelly, one of her favorite ideas, and this came out of a workshop earlier. I can't remember which workshop it was. I'm not sure if it was Hazard County or another one, but another idea was working with the hospitals to make sure that every newborn baby, that on their little pink or blue, blanket that they go home with, that there's a little that says, "Remember me, fill out the census," because children, especially at that age, are often undercounted. We've also, I think some of the other ideas that came out were for cereal boxes and partnering with organizations or companies that make baby food, and see if they can put something, they can put a little, a link to the census, or if they can just put a little Census 2020 logo on as a reminder. So it's all been interesting ideas, and once again, it's interesting for us because it's showing that we have a lot of partners that we still need to reach out to around this issue. But I think one of the issues that probably has gotten the most momentum following these workshops is we've seen so many share outs that focus on pediatricians and pediatricians' offices and the role that they play in that early childhood development. And I mean, who do you trust more? At that stage, you really trust your pediatrician. It's your child's health. And so we've focused a lot on taking some of those insights and some of those ideas We are now partnering with the Federation of Pediatric Organizations and really speaking with them about some of these ideas. So I think that's another great thing that shows that these workshops, they don't just end after they're done. We take some of these ideas and we speak with partners about them. We speak with funders about them. We connect partners that participate in them. We connect them with other partners to actually make those ideas happen. And so we keep a portfolio of these ideas and wait for the right opportunity to speak with partners that could actually make it happen. That also speaks with, I think, another share out that came out with a campaign with Procter & Gamble, since they make the diapers. So something like that, having a little tag on the diaper that says Census 2020 or Count Me. So it's really great when we have these events is that we're taking these ideas from our partners and from the participants and really trying to put them into action with those partners.
So it's not only important to do these and then implement the ideas in your locality, but to feed ideas back to you in the Census Bureau so that you guys can then reach out to more national partners. Did Procter & Gamble say yes, or are you still reaching out to them?
We are still waiting. It's actually on the Secretary of Commerce's list because it is such a priority. We're still waiting, but we are hoping to have a good relationship with them. But we're still waiting, and that's the thing with many of our partners. There's so many that we want to reach, but we have a very large list that we intend to, but they're on there.
That's great. We do have a comment here. I'm not sure it's a question, which says, these are great ideas. The executive director of the Utah chapter of the Academy of Pediatricians is in our office. We can easily partner with her to do some of those things.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Well, reach out to me if you have any questions, and I would love to hear how that happens. The Undersecretary in Department of Commerce, that's one of their key interests and issues is the undercount of young children, and Karen Kelly's husband is a pediatrician, and she actually addressed this before the Federation of Pediatric Organizations 2 weeks ago on the issue and how important it is to her. So please let me know how that goes and what you need from us.
Great. I'm going to speak for Terry and say that I'm sure she'd be happy to do that. Does anyone else have some questions or comments here? I'm so excited to hear about Procter & Gamble because I really wanted to reach out to them, and I think you guys have a lot more leverage than we do, and I think their ability to, there isn't a family in the country with a young child that doesn't buy diapers, so I think their reach is really broad, and I also think that shows the real range of diversity and creativity that we can use to try and reach out to these families now that people are really focusing on them. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to say thank you so much, Claire. This was great. I do want to flag for the other people, for the people on the webinar, that Claire is working with us on a series of webinars, and I think our next one is kind of the processes of the census. Is that right, Claire? That's the next one we're doing?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And we're going to get that on the schedule soon and get a notice out. So please do keep an eye out for it. And at some point we will do one on complete count committees. And I'm forgetting the fourth topic. But at any rate,
the fourth is CBAM's, the CBAM's results.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the communication survey results. So we're going to have a series of really helpful, I think, webinars. So please stay tuned, and we look forward to you joining us. I will put this recording out for anyone who wants to hear it again, or if you have a colleague you want to have it. Claire, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your working with us. This was great. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording.